Fans of the Horus Heresy and Warhammer 40,000, thank you very much for joining me for today's 8th edition newsflash for Warhammer 40,000. It's the 28th of April 2017. Not disappointing as Games Workshop continues to publish new and juicy details of the 8th edition rule set on the Warhammer Community website, and today's post deals with the psychic phase, moving into that oh so perilous interface between the immaterium and real space, and seeing what they're proposing for the new rules in this area. There's a second section of this video and we're going to do some rumour control, because there are rumours over on Faeit 212. A couple of juicy bits of information have been posted in what can only be described as a leak, and given that my channel's called Leakycheese, I thought it would be only appropriate to cover. So yes, I'll be talking about that as well. I will leave links to the Warhammer Community website article and also the Faeit 212 rumour articles in the description, and I would encourage you to check those out in person. This is tonight's high quality graphics. Today's budget increase, well, we've been able to get 3 different coloured lines on the title, which is quite nice. And also we've got some extra colours, and I've increased my labour budget, so I've been able to write more stuff and write more slowly, hopefully to make it a bit more legible, although looking at that I'm not entirely sure I've been successful. Anyway, that's my scrawly handwriting. Okay, so let's talk about the Warhammer Community post for today, talking about the psychic phase. So the psychic phase has been reworked, and in a fair few words they've basically said they've completely ditched the old concept and adopted something new, yet in my mind somewhat older. And the proposed psychic phase bears more than a passing resemblance to psychic phases of earlier editions. People who played 1st and 2nd edition won't find it unfamiliar, as far as I can tell. So what does this mean then? First thing is the warp pool has gone. So the warp pool is this idea that you have this combined homogenized pool of psychic power that all of your psykers must draw from. That concept has been abandoned, and every psyker has their own individual capability, in effect ability to cast. So there's no one pool of power that controls how much you can do. And the example they give is how very powerful psykers tended to hoover up all the power every turn, e.g. Magnus or another high-level capability user wouldn't leave much power for your small users, and they would actually end up only really, a lot of the time, only really being a psychic battery in effect. So that's gone. And psychic abilities are going to be based around a difficulty test. You have to pass a 2d6 roll to execute it. I don't know exactly how that works yet. I'm not sure if that's just a straight 2d6 or if there is more to it than that. We will have to see. Individual psykers now have their own capabilities. There is a new common psychic capability which all psykers will have, regardless of what particular species are, or any of the factors, their particular skills. Every psyker will have an ability called Smite, and basically this has got a ranged effect. You make your psychic test. If you're successful, you inflict a number of what are called mortal wounds, and I'll come back to that, on the nearest enemy unit. If you pass at a higher difficulty threshold, you do more damage. So described as having a warp charge value of 5. So that may mean on 2d6 you have to get 5+ to successfully manifest it. I don't know that for sure because I've not specified that. I'm just making an assumption there. And it says, if manifested, the closest visible unit within 18 inches suffers D3 mortal wounds. And then it goes on to say, if the result of a psychic test was more than 10, the psychic suffers D6 mortal wounds instead. So maybe that is a 2d6 test. I'm guessing Snake Eyes is going to be a Perils of a Warp, if I've got my assumption right there about this being a 2d6 test. To block a psychic effect, you will be able to attempt that. We don't know the mechanism, and any opposing psyker within 24 inches of the originating psyker will be able to attempt that, but we don't know how that works yet. My final point here is the Perils of a Warp remain. Right, so that is the new psychic phase. So what does that mean? Well, for me, I think the idea of making psychic effects specific to the individual psykers, I think, is a good idea. I quite like the idea of a shared power. It will give every psyker a common battlefield offensive utility value, and that's a good thing. It also cuts out a whole faffy section of the phase where you have to roll your warp power. You can't oppose every enemy psionic attack, you've got to have someone, you've got to have a psyker within 24 inches. So that's going to, well, first it's going to encourage players to deploy their psykers more effectively and efficiently. It will reduce the number of rolls that are being made. So yeah, I think I like the sound of that. To be honest, it's very early 40k style. I mean, I keep going back to this, but there are mechanics in the original Rogue Trader game and the early editions which worked well, and there were mechanics that were less good, and there was quite a lot of mechanics that weren't very well refined for the time. However, in the original game, every psyker had their own set of abilities, they had their own power pool, and it worked really well. So yeah, I like the sound of this. Right, now let's move on to the second section, which is talking about mortal wounds. So mortal wounds, I mean, this is only mentioned on the back of the smite power. However, the mortal wound, I think, is going to be a very important mechanic in the game. And the mortal wound is a wound that essentially, I think it's an automatic wound, because it's described here as saying they can't be saved by any means and punch straight through thick armour, and even invulnerable saves. Gosh, currently at the moment, the invulnerable save is go-to defense for high quality troops and heroes. Here we have an attack type which is going to bypass that. Oh, if you're fluff familiar, I think this fits quite well, because the way psychic powers are described, they always do sound like they bypass material armor, and the idea of creating that mechanic in the game, I think, is very fluffy and fits a fluff well. So yeah, I like that. I do like that a lot. I'm getting those mortal wounds, that could well be a mechanic that carries over to other weapons as well. And we know that D weapons are going in the current iteration. However, now any weapon could be given the characteristic of mortal wounds. So perhaps our Titan mounted Bellicosa volcano cannons may inflict mortal wounds. Let's wait and see. That's everything from the Warhammer community post for today. Let's move on to the third section of this newsflash. This is dealing with the leak. This is rumour control. Here are the facts. Over on Faeit 212, 2 articles have been posted which are apparent leaks. These may be official leaks. They may be unofficial leaks. We don't know. I mean, like the all-time famous leak, I think, was the plastic Space Marine sprue shots that came out from Calth many months and months before the actual game was released. But what they're saying here is we've got a few bits of information. So the first thing is some details around a new Warhammer 40,000 box set. So the leak says that the new box set is going to be Plague Marines and Cultists versus the Ultramarines. So the price is given in US dollars, which is $120. Now that would approximate to the same cost as in UK sterling as the current box set game. So today's background is provided by the Horus Heresy Burning of Prospero game. I think it would put it at the same price point as that, £95. I think there's some sort of feeling there that they might have found a sweet spot in the market for the price for the goods. And what they're saying is there's going to be a, quote, blob of Chaos Cultists, some Traitor Terminators, and Plague Marines, and a Chaos Lord, and also some drones of some variety. The Ultramarines will get 2 tactical squads, a Devastator squad, an Assault squad, a Librarian, and a Captain. Also included are dice and rulers. So those are the miniatures. So an impressive sounding bunch of miniatures there, and I guess sort of consistent with the sort of high figure count that we've seen in these games. And the rumour also suggests a softback rulebook and a campaign book will be included. So very interesting. This is a rumour, so we don't know if it's true, but then again, does it feel right? Well, we have had marketing from G-Dubs around the Death Guard recently, the Plague Marines, and of course the Ultramarines are always a perennial Games Workshop marketing favourite. So from that point of view, it sounds quite plausible. And the inclusion of plastic cultists is also a very good marketing move, because the cultists will be usable across the board by all Chaos powers. So yeah, so a very versatile unit to include as well. So that feels plausible. We'll have to see though, it may be wrong. I mean, there's more information in that post about upcoming codexes as well. So I'll leave you to read that. Then the second post talks about some information around the upcoming release schedule. So the first thing is a suggested release date for 8th edition of June the 10th. So not long at all, just over a month now. Apparently, according to the leak, that release date will be accompanied by the free PDF rule set with the core 8th edition rules being released. So that's obviously going to be very exciting for all of us. And that's also good because it means everybody can get involved in 8th edition from the word go. So I like that. Core rulebook is apparently only going to be just 12 pages long. So that's really, that's a lot shorter than we've seen before. Now, it's not necessarily 12 pages like for like content. Strip the artwork down to the minimum. That could well be a lot less. Compare that to current rulebooks. I mean, the current rulebook is around 160 pages long, so that's drastically shorter than current. I mean, even the original 40k rulebook, the main combat rules were probably around 50 pages long, although there was a lot of artwork mixed in there. So that says that the rules have been dramatically streamlined. It may be a little bit of a false reduction in size because they might have moved sections of the rules into the relevant codices. So that apparent length might be, the short length may not be telling us all the story there. So in terms of making judgments as to whether or not the game could be dumbed down, I think we need to be mindful of that and avoid making judgment until we actually see what the products look like, I think. However, even if it is reduced down to 12 pages, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a bad thing. I've played lots and lots of war games over the years which have got pretty short core rules sections, and they're really good games. So you take that with a little bit of a pinch of salt at the moment. A lot more stuff on there as well. It also talks about 4 free PDFs going up covering the core faction. So there'll be the Armies of the Imperium, the Armies of Chaos, the Armies of Xenos, and A Galaxy in Flames, which is the art and storybook. And I hope, if that's the structure for the PDFs, I hope we see the same thing carried through into the actual hard copy books or the for digital paid for downloads. So I would hope to see a rule book, those 3 codices, and also the Galaxy in Flames, all as separate products. So us as a customer, we can all choose to buy exactly what we want. And I hope that's the case. So yeah, so go check out Faeit 212 for those rumours. And remember, they're rumours, so they might not be true. So don't blame me if they're not right. Hopefully I won't be consumed by a xenomorph for talking about rumour control though. That's everything I've got for you today. All my thoughts on these latest bits of news. Please discuss in the comment section what you think about this. Perhaps you've heard something. I'd like to thank ShadowFox178 for sharing the links with me to the Faeit 212 articles. Thank you very much, ShadowFox. I appreciate that. Let me know your latest thoughts in the comment section. Apparently, the next post is going to be on the shooting phase, so that's something that's dear to all of our hearts. Let's hope that comes out tomorrow, and I will post another news flash. Thank you very much for watching. I'll speak to you next time, and goodbye.